So Chov Gimel in the Toisus v'i daliכא achrini ודאי מההוא nafel. So if there isn't, Gemara says that there isn't another shovach. So if there's no other shovach, then for sure it came from that shovach. The bishlema be'iike de nafish mine. So the Toisus is going to explain what the question of the Gemara is. So why does the guy get it? So if there's another one, so Tosh is asking like, well, if there's another one in the area, then why does the finder keep it? So, well, that's good because the other one, it's good that it belongs to whoever finds it. For example, that the other one was shel heksher or shel kusim. So if it's shel heksher, so you have again like on the top of Masada, they have a shovach, they have the pigeonholes in there. So you can have just like pigeonholes, places, caves. And they don't have an owner, so the pigeons are there. So shall heksher or shall kutim if it's a goy's. So therefore you can keep it because it's a goy's pigeon. Just go steal his pigeons. So no one actually owns the pigeons. They don't have like a kinyan on the pigeons. A lot of these it's a takanas chachamim of like stealing. So it's like my bees. If you come in and steal my bees, I don't own the bees because I didn't make a kinyan on the bees. Like I make a kinyan on a cow. I don't make kinyan on bees or doves, but there's like since they're nesting in my area or whatever it is, so then there's like a takanas chachamim that I get them. So the koyim don't really have kinyanim on them, therefore there's no takana, so therefore you can keep them. Aval hashta deleika, but now there's nothing else in the area. So I'm the Baal Shovach. I'm not fighting with another one with a heksher or whatever it is. So therefore, why does he get it? Wadai מההוא nafel, for sure it came from my Shovach. Therefore, why do you get it? You can't answer daliכא denafish eile shavim. So it's not that there's not one that's bigger, but they're both equal, and the heksher one is equal with mine. Demikol makam מההוא shel מצאו. Because everyone knows why is it hefs? Kevin shakorov lezeh dehachi. Why is it belonging to the Matzo? Because the other guy's in the area, he's got more than me, we're equal, but it's karov to my shovach, and therefore, why does the finder keep it? Because it's harehu shematzoi. Because it's mashma that when it's outside the 50 amos, it belongs to the finder. Afalpi shekorov lezeh. So this is a korov to lo muchach. And it's saying that even though it's outside the chamisha nama, it belongs to the finder, even though it's korov to mine. Mizeh. The hatan and matzu shel ben shayfam korov lezeshlo the keshehen shavim mazlin basar korov. Because even so, once they're equal, so you can't answer. So again, it's going back on the Tosh is saying you can't say that they're equal, because if they're equal, then the korov gets it. Therefore, why does the finder get it? So at the end of this, Tosh is just explaining the question of the Gemara. So if there is no other shovach in the area, then for sure it came from my shovach, even if it's outside of achimashma, even if it's outside 50 amos, it goes to the 50, even though that the korov lezeh mizeh, even though it's closer to my one. So that's the question. That if there was another one and they're equal, and there I would still get it. So therefore, Tosis explained the question of the Gemara. Right, so wadai מההוא nafel, for sure, then from the Baal Shovach gets it. Ve'im toimer v'dilma me'orlah derachim nafel. Maybe someone dropped it. Why are we saying that it's wadai from the Shovach? Maybe someone dropped it. Because we say later on, and this is the final piece of the sugya, so that you find that people have dropped these wine, the leather wine bottles, and they find it. It's with the in the kerem with the grapes. So we're saying that these wine bottles were dropped. So why don't we say that this pigeon was dropped? So if you're in a vineyard and you find wine bottles there, wine cases, then for sure somebody dropped it there because they don't grow in a vineyard. Grapes grow in a vineyard. But these, what they would use to transport wine, someone else dropped them there. So there we say that it didn't come from the people of the wine of the vineyard. It came from random people of Alhaka. But since we can just say that it came from the shovach, that it came from the the owner of the doves. It came from the dove house. So therefore, L'Islam, we're not going to say and make a chazaka that it came as in a fila. Here, Tosi says, B'nei Adam nizharim shelo yipulim mehem mayonim, that people are careful, they don't drop their doves. I'm not exactly sure why people are careful not to drop their doves. It's like a pet. They love them so much, they're not going to drop them. It's like you're not going to drop your dog in the mall. Or it's like they're so expensive, they're not going to drop them. Or, I mean, exactly what? Like, I don't want to drop my money. Sometimes it happens. But apparently people are very careful about their doves. They don't drop their doves. So therefore it's wadai. It came from the shayvach and it didn't fall. So the alda afekohu le Rebbe Yirmiyah mi bei midrash. This is why they kicked him out. They don't explain. It's because he asked a question that is not shkeach klal, that you're never going to find. It's so exactly 50 amas to the belly button of the pigeon, and then the half of his body is outside, half of it inside. That's not shkeach klal. The hechi. I try to mean directly, because how could it be? It's such a case. It's such a mikra that one leg is within 50 and one leg is outside of 50. B'tzumtzum. How could it be so mitzumtzum? That's tzimtzum k'peshuto, that it's tzimtzum. Taha ashkach the matnisa nami b'kihay gavna ayri. Because just to see the Mishnah itself is dealing with such a crazily unrealistic case. Dekatani machsel machsel yechaloko. So you have a pigeon that is exactly equidistant from two shoivaks. That's a ridiculous case. Why is that any different to exactly 50 amas to the middle of the pigeon? So you have exactly equidistance from the two. So the Mishnah is doing it, he's doing it. So why so nearer the Rebbeinu Tam? This is why they kicked him out. The Mishum Hachi Efko. This is why they kicked him out. Mishum the Menmadada and Madada Klal Yotim Mechamishem Ama. So the Chachamim said that they go 50 amos. That means if Ilu Raglo Achad is too far. To call Midas Chachamim Kenhu. So when the Chachamim say it's 50 amas, it's 50 amas. Now, a simple Peshat would be that where the Chachamim getting this idea that, again, a Madad is basically a pigeon that doesn't fly. So where does the pigeon get, how do they know how far pigeons go? So what are they doing? Testing all these pigeons, and maybe it does go 50. Well, every one that it's the black swan. What's the black swan effect is, I'll prove to you that there's no such thing as a black swan because I'll show you 1,000,000 white swans, and you haven't proven anything. So how can you test this or 50? So l'chayra, Moshe Rabbeinu told them that when God made the world, God told them when God made the world, He made it so that if you don't fly, you only go 50. So therefore, God said on Moshe, so it's 50, yes, 50, and a incremental piece, no. So therefore, it can't be a leg outside, and therefore he's, again, the mashmos of Taisus is that he's casting dispersions on Chazal, and that's why they kicked him out. Matzu ben shnei shayvchim. So you find the pigeon between two doves, even though that one of them is more, even though so one of them was, so you have two shayvach, and one of them has got more than the other. So you have a roiv and a korov. So Imer reader hachpercha havi masli mefrach mat nisan de chonius. So again, he's been asking a few times that why didn't he? And said before you can't ask on the 9 shops because the 9 shops is a korov de lo muchach. Since it's a korov de lo muchach, because just because you have the meat outside the butcher doesn't mean it would have come from there. It could have come from anywhere and someone dropped it. So therefore you can't ask on the 9 shops. And I was going to say that since this is so why here we go boss of the korov and why by the 9 shops we go boss of the roiv? So why is this the high korov de lo muchachu? Why is it a korov de lo muchach? Because if it's betoch chamishim lezeh, if one of the shayvach is within 50, having nami toch chamishim lezeh, it's also within 50 of the other one. And since you have within 50, and Tosi said before that within 50 is a korov de muchach, but since it's both of them within 50, so therefore it's not a korov de muchach. Because just like it's a korov muchach dezeh, it's a korov muchach dezeh, and therefore it's not a korov muchach to either of them. The whole point of korov muchach is that the karivas shows that it's from here. So since it's within 50 of both of them, we don't know which one it's from. Since we don't know which one it's from, therefore it's not korov de muchach. We have ichos chamishim lezeh, and therefore it's not korov de muchach. So therefore, but afilu hachi as linam poser krova. So even with all that, we still go after the korov. Again, this is where we are in the Havamina before the truths in the Gemara. So therefore, we're going after the korov. Since we're going after the korov, this is a question in the 9 chonis. Why are we going past the roiv in that case? That's twice the question. We could have done it, but why? We can maintain the memor the iker lo pircha ela mishum de poil lemifrach when there's a basar roiv da'alma. Because after it's answered them, he said, "Well, let's go basar roiv da'alma." Now the roiv da'alma is a korov demuchach. And therefore, we're not really asking this first question on Matzav ben Shnei Shuvchim. We're not really asking. The kasha is not really after a korov de lo muchach. It's really after korov de muchach. Because if we go basar da'alma, ruba da'alma, then these two shoivachs are korov muchach connected the rest of the world. Therefore, for sure, it came from one of these two and not from somewhere else because they're right here. So therefore, the iker question is a question of a korov de lo muchach. Sorry, it's the Eker question is a korov de muchach because we want to ask basar roiv da'alma, and therefore there's no point asking on the 9 shops because they'll just answer because it's our whole question really is a korov de muchach. We're not really asking this question because we're expecting the answer of that they're equal. So therefore, we're not going to bother asking the 9 shops because once they're equal, we got nowhere to go. But here they're equal. Let's go basar ruba da'alma, which is our real question. V'kasha l'rashba the hechi matzi le'meimor afal gav dechabanai nafish. So how in the havamina? How can we have the havamina here to say that one of them is more than the other? Hakatani mechsa al mechsa shnehim yochluku. But we said if it's 50-50, both of them divided up. But if one's got more than the other. So therefore, if one of them, for sure, one of them has more than the other. For sure they're equal. Because if they are, why we go after the korov? Because for sure they have more. So this is taka. There is a roiv. How can you mataris the seifa? That there is the question that really it's in the havamina. We didn't really have the havamina that one of them has more, and we're holding that they're equal even in the havamina. So rather than asking this, could have asked the tamech. The veliz bosa ruva da'alma. So we're asking that it should really be whoever finds it keeps it because we don't know who owns it. So having matzi l'shinu de'ain. So we could have given the answer. Again, this 30 ris is coming from Daf Aleph, where Abiy says that a pigeon only flies 30 ris. So therefore, since you only have two dovecots within 30 ris, then it's either one of those two because doves that are further away aren't going to get here. They wanted to give an answer to me so there's a lot. So that they wanted to mirror the answer here to keep the Mishnah between the Reish and the Seifa talking in the same case. They wanted to mirror them. So even though now they're talking about the wine, the kerem, the vineyards. And the path in between the vineyards, and that's not dumi the reisha b'chlal. So the reisha is not talking about vineyards. The hareisha lo mari b'shvil shel karamim baha lo kapid. So there we're not worried about it. But my delo have dumi the reisha. So since we're not talking about shvil shel karamim, so therefore if we make an akimta in the seifa, we don't have to. It doesn't matter about the reisha. But if here, you see the tuchshel, if the seifa there was only 2 within 30 ris, then the reisha would not be that, and therefore would have to make, because it's an ipul shenimsa betoch chamisha mama hareishu shabala shoivach. So chutz mechamisha mama hareishu hu shel motzoi. So it would have to make it. So if we're going to make a difference in the case between the Reish and the Seifa, would have to say that in the Mishnah, because here we're talking about in the Seifa where there's only 2 within 30 ris, but in the Reish it's not like that. So the Mishnah would have to say. But since we're not talking about the Shvil Shal Karam B'Klal, Therefore, we don't have to mention it in the Mishnah. And also, we could also give an a teretz that why is it his, because it's closer to him and it's within 50 amos, and it's a madada, it's not going to go further than 50 amos, but it didn't give that teretz, but that's another teretz which it could have given. So chof dalet amud aleph at the toisvis, the whole Dimiddidi ihadar chazi lekina mididi. This is we did the Gemara last time, and Toisvis is saying we don't need this whole idea of turning around. Lo hayitzarech lemay dekamar ihadar chazi lekina mididi. We don't need this whole svara. Kevin de shubכין דעלמא yotzim machamishim min ha-karamim. That since the shuvach, the other shuvachs in the world, are more than 50 from the kerem, from the vineyard. Now, Toisvis is going to change his lashon. So, just at the moment, he seems to be saying the kerem is all you need, because again, the terrace is a shvil shel kerem. But Toisvis, I'm from the lashon of Toisvis, it seems to be it's just from the kerem, that you go into a kerem, that you can be madada into a kerem, and then because you're in the kerem, you can go further away. So as leikel amichash le Rubba da'almah. So you don't have to be worried about the whole amo. The whole amadada ain't amadada yoter mechamishim. But because anything that can't fly doesn't go fly for further than 50. So all the other shuvachs are further than 50. Aval hanach shnei shubכין, with these two dovecoats shehakaramaim betoch 50 amma. So the kerem is within 50. Shelehem mati shapir. So even though they're further away than 50, the kerem is within 50. But the other shuvachs, the kerem itself is further than 50. Therefore, they can never get to the kerem, and therefore they can't go further. Dekarof lezeh shelo afilo nimsuchus l'50 amma. So even though this shuvach, which is within 50 of the kerem, it's good to say the korov is his, even though he's taka outside of 50, even though it's a madada. To lo nafik mitoris madada, even though it's out of 50. Why? Da'alidei karamim medadadi yoter mechamishim. So this, it's just Toisvis saying, I don't need this whole thing that you can still see it, because once you hit the kerem, once your shuvach is within 50 of the kerem, then you get to the kerem, then you go longer because you're in the kerem. This whole thing of seeing the shuvach, you don't need it anymore. So at this stage in Toisvis, you just need the shuvach to be within 50 of the kerem, v'zeu, and then therefore once it hits the kerem, it'll just continue in the kerem for whatever reason. Eile, so therefore Eile here he's saying, why do I need this whole thing of turning around and seeing the shuvach? I read afilu im yehiyu shubכין da'almah bein ha-karamim. So that I need that terrace to be able to turn around is where you have other shuvachs amongst the karamim, and therefore you have multiple karamim, multiple shuvachs within 50 of the kerem. So for that, I do need this idea of chadr chaditz. Now the odd is a completely different teretz. Midanaket shvil. So now Toisvis is going to get into the whole idea of shvil, because that really up to now he hasn't mentioned the word shvil, so he's beginning with kerem, b'pashtus. The shvil mashma she'elu beis ha-shubכין b'toch ha-shvil. So we're saying that these two shuvachs, where you're saying karv lezeh, they are on the path. The hanipol kamo kein nimsa b'toch ha-shvil. So here now he's kind of giving a whole different terror to what's going on. That the nipol, at this dove, this baby dove, is on the path, and the two shuvachs are on the path as well. Delecha lemicha shehen mi shubכין da'almah even afilu einam roichim klal. So it says that they're not from any other shuvach, even if they're even closer than the other two. Kevin delom matzi chazi lekina. That since he can't see the kina, so even though that the shuvach is like in the kerem, but it is surrounded by grapes, and therefore where you find the nipol, he can't see the shuvach. So there, it's only going to be any shuvach that he can see. If it can't see the shuvach, it's not going to go at all, even if it's less than 50. But those two which you say the korov, so therefore it could be from any of those two because there's nothing interposing. So there seems to be, you see, really he says that it's a odd teretz. The odd teretz just seems to say anything he can see. Once it can't see it, it won't even go 5 amos. But if it can see it, it'll go forever. Whereas in the first teretz up here, it seems to be saying that once it's in the kerem, and the kerem can go further, I don't care if we can see it or not. It seems to be a big switch here in the Jerusalem of Tosfos. Maybe an Ikit Amri better, but seemingly in this teretz of Va'od, it seems to be a whole different svara than in the Reisha there. The Amar Abiy Yafan and Nami Tanina. So again, this is coming in the Rov and Korov, and we have it from the Prusdor. But Gemara Bagag a Prusdor Mina Lol V'Lifanim Iri. So Tosfos is basically giving a sugi in Nida, saying where is this blood? This blood is taka on the gag of the Prusdor, just inside. Now the lul is the hole coming out of the bladder. So it's just inside that lul V'Lifanim. Iri kudemuchach beperkol hayad v'sugia dahasim afarish b'mokomos. If you want to know what Tosfos is going on about, go over to see it in Nida. It kind of carries on here. V'yafal gav da'ikah Aliyah to mark, even though you have the bladder that's closer. V'karov demuchachu. Now again, this is Tosfos again going back to the Tosfos on Chokim Alam base, the way that he's explaining the second teretz, the way that he's explaining the chiddush of Rabbi Xanina. We're dealing with Karov Demuchach, which he says, then I will explain the whole sugya like this, and here he goes again. So this in the lul is a Karov Demuchach. Why? The Karov de Aliyahu. So it's a Karov Demuchach because it's right by the bladder area, and it's extremely difficult for the blood of the makor to get there because it's on the roof of the gag, as he said in the previous Tosfos. So how could it get there from the makor? Elim came shacha beyoiter kamosha perish b'mesechet nida. So if you go over there, you see the woman has to like get into weird yoga positions in order for the blood to get to that place. So therefore, the fact that the blood is there, it's a korov demuchach, and we still say the roiv we go basar, the roiv and korov we go basar the roiv. Now here. We have to go quickly back into the Gemara. So Rava says, Roiv Motzi, Kamara's Roiv Motzi, Leikla Memor, Leikel Man da Amor. So here Rava is saying that because the blood from the Makor is Roiv Motzi, then even if you have a Korov Keneged, Roiv Motzi, everybody holds Roiv Motzi is greater than a Korov. So now Dtani, Rabbi Xiya seems to be saying a raya from Rava, from what Rabbi Xiya is saying. And again, just to be clear, Abiy brought the Mishnah, and the Mishnah Abiy Yafanetanina Dam Beninsa Beprosder Sveiko Tame. That's what the Mishnah says. Now this is Rabbi Xiya again. Don't get confused. Rabbi Xiya and Rabbi Xanina. Rabbi Xiya says Dam Beninsa Beprosder Chayven Alav Al Bias Mikdash Resort from Alav Esa Truma. So there, what Rabbi Xiya is doing. Again, Rabbi Xiya is a Talmud of Rebbe, and he was Masada the Brises, so he is a early Amoira Leis Tana. Rabbi Xanina is an Amoira, so Rabbi Xanina comes after Rabbi Xiya. And the Mishnah is just saying the Sveiko Tame. The Mishnah says Sveiko Tame, and Rabbi Xiya is telling him that Safek Tame is Taka Wadai Tame. Now, who said this? The Tani Rabbi Xiya. So the pashtus of the way the Gemara is saying is that it's Rava who's saying it, that it's a Roiv Motzi, the Tani Rabbi Xiya. So Tosfos says, Igar sin in Tani ati shapir. So if it says Tani, not de Tani, aval Igar sin in de Tani, tema. So Tosfos is going to say that since the pashtus here, that Rava, de Tani Rabbi Xiya, that has nothing to do with Roiv Motzi. If this Tani Rabbi Xiya, it means that we've been given a list of cases for or against Rabbi Xanina, and then this would just be another one for Rabbi Xanina. So that's good, says Tosfos. But if it's the Tani coming from Rava, so therefore we got a problem. And he's going to say why. How can we know that Rabbi Xiya is saying it's vada because it's roiv motzi? Doma lav mishum de roiv motzi kamar Rabbi Xiya de seroif and alav esa truma ela mishum de roiv korov halachach roiv ka Rabbi Xanina. Again, don't get confused with Rabbi Xanina and Rabbi Xiya. So I don't know from this if I just have a Rabbi Xiya says dam and insim prosdor chayven lav al bias mikdash. That's vadai. So why is it vadai? Is it because it roiv a korv bossa roiv? Maybe that's why. So how do you know it's a Tani? That's a Rova Matzi. There's no way to prove it from there. So this the Meme here in the Bach, he changes the girsa here to V'yesh loymar ha Dtani lo midivrei Rava. Dtani. So even if you Gerson Dtani, the pshat is not the Gerson of the Bach, but the pshat is that Dtani still works. That Dtani is not Rava saying it. It's not Rava bringing the pride. Who ela Gemara who the Maisila the Shapir Havi Muchach by Mimat Nisan. So again, Abiy is saying that Af Ana Namitanina, we've also learned a Mishnah as a support for Rabbi Xanina because Rabbi Xiyə says that it's a Vadai and not a Suffolk. And I can't learn it. He's just going to say this. I can't learn from the Mishnah itself. I need this Rabbi Xiyə in addendum because Sveko Tame maybe it's Taka Suffolk. And I only know from Rabbi Xiyə that's a Taka Vadai. Therefore, Roiv Akarv, we posken the Roiv. It's not just the Roiv is a nice thing. We posken the Roiv without Suffolk, and you it's not a Suffolk. So Ela Gemara who the Maisila the Shapir Havi Muchach Abiy Mimatnis Abiy Mimatnisin Denida the Roiv Acholach Achar Roiv. So that's even if it's a Dtani, it's going on Abiy, not Rava. The Afal Gav the Katani Sveko Tame. Al Korcha Lav Svekohu. So even though the Mishnah says Safek, it's not a Safek from Rabbi Xiyə. Mintan Rabbi Xiyə, the Chayvin Alav Obias Mikdash Shorfin Alav Truma. This Haggah seems to be Maklokas that it's not a Haggah here, Alkan Haggah. So without the brackets, and this is a Haggah, but we take out the brackets, so it is so it's not Haggah. This is the hemshek of the Toisus. So Maharam Oimer, the Rava Maisila, this is what Toisus rejected originally. The Roiv Matzi who that is Roiv. Rabbi Xiyə is a Roiv Matzi. To eat Eino Matzi, if it's not a Matzi, Im Kain Mike Mashmalan Rabbi Xanina. So Rabbi Xanina again came after Rabbi Xiyə. So therefore, if Rabbi Xiyə has already said Roiv Korov, so therefore what's Rabbi Xanina doing? Kaven Dashmin La Miditani Rabbi Xiyə. So Rabbi Xiyə already told us Roiv Korov from his parish of the Mishnah in Nida of Mimat Nisan, the Nida, we're not able to be Hochiach, because even if it's not a Roiv Motzi, you still need Rabbi Xanina to tell us the law name is Sveko Tame. So even if it's this Roiv Korov, so I still need Rabbi Xanina, I still need Rabbi Xiyə there to tell me it's not a Suffolk Tame, it's a Suffolk Vadai, who's Suffolk Mamish. It's not a, when it says Sveko Tame, it's not a Suffolk Mamish. So it's a Vadai. And so now Rava is Mahad is Hitter. He goes back. The Kamar to lo have a Roiv Matzi. That's not a Roiv Matzi. So now what is Rabbi Xanina doing? It's not a Roiv Matzi. Rabbi Xiyə tells us it's a Roiv Korov. So therefore, what's Rabbi Xanina doing? Lashmin and Dei mi Tani Rabbi Xiyə have a mina to Roiv Matzi who Kamash Malan Rabbi Xanina love Roiv Matzi who. So even though Rava is Chayzer, so here we have in the Maharam is saying that they have to be separate. Rabbi Xanina and Rabbi Xiyə have to be saying different things. So therefore, Rava brings it, and it has to be talking about Roiv Matzi, because otherwise, what's Rabbi Xanina doing? So therefore, in the Maskana, when Rava is Chayzer and Itaka holds is Roiv Korov, so then what's Rabbi Xiyə and Rabbi Xanina saying the same thing? He says no. Rabbi Xanina has to tell you that Rabbi Xiyə isn't saying Roiv Matzi, because if I just had, I would think maybe that's why it's Roiv Matzi and not Roiv Korov. So now Shema Mina Isa to Rabbi Zera. So we're going to have the three things. We also have Da'oraytã. So the three things. So this is so the Rabbi Zera is saying that it's a even Roiv Echod. So near Laritzba, the Afal Gav, the Taima, the Be'inyan Trei Roibi. So why do I need Trei Roiv? So we touched on this briefly the last time, and again, it's in the Gemara we did in Kesuvos, that the woman who has relation with somebody in the town, that if she went to his house, then it's a Roiv. We go boss of the Roiv, because it's if he went to her house, he's Kol HaPorish Meruba Porish. But if she went to his house, it's Kavua, and therefore Kol Kavua Maxadami, and therefore we need the second. We need the second rov, and again you can see that Ashir over there is why the second rov helps, because if we know, basically it doesn't help if we know that for sure she went there, but if he went to her, even though that it's a kol river porish, we need the second rov as a chumrah in case of those women that go to him that might think it's mutter. So we need it over though to Rov Havi Misham Gazera Rov Siyua Atu Rov Ha'ir. So Rov Ha'ir is kosher. The Rov Siyua are the people who come into the city. I need the two roivs, so that somebody, the woman, won't think that just like when he comes to me, it's mutter. If I go to him, it's also mutter. Become a calm. So therefore, what's it got to do? What's it got to do with the case of the teisha chanios? Itzrech leila meimer gavi chanios. The law beinian trey ruby. So I still need the chiddush. I don't need trey ruv. Dafokapta leila meimer hachi. So I don't need the whole gezerah, and I don't need the gezerah of the siyua. And it's the whole point of the problem here is that you have you could bust to the roiv, and if you're in the shop, taka, it's the kavua. So there's no gezerah at the kavua. That's why it's mutter. Mikom ikel lemigzor shema yikach mina kavua ilav da'ikah ruva da'almã. So here we have that maybe I should make a gezerah that if you find meat in the city, it's osir when there's only one roiv. In case you go into the butcher and think that if I got it in the butcher, it's also mutter. So therefore, I should be geyser there. Kamash malan. This is what it says. Kamash malan in Kesuvos. Kamash malan. That I need two roivs for yichus. It's a special chumrah by the woman in order for yichus. And that's really the whole chiddush here, that I don't need two roivs. But I don't need two roivs, and therefore I don't need two roivs by the piece of meat you find, and that's what Rebbe Zera is saying. Even one roiv is good enough, because I'm not making gezeras atu kavua, which I do for the woman. It's because a special chumrah of yichus. The gabi isha. Now this is our isha with the prusdor and the blood in the prusdor. Nami igazrinin ba'alma. So that's blood from all over the place. So maybe we need, blood from her arm that she cuts herself. So that needs to go there as well. That all needs to be havelanla, or it's blood. Okay, most blood you're going to find would be needed blood, maybe, because had it blood, people were bleeding a lot there and all this type of stuff. So a lot of blood you'll find. You're worried about ketems. You're worried about blood stains being nida. So blood. So do I need roiv of ba'alma blood? Havelan lahachmir. We should be machmir shalolisrof mina lol v'lifanin atu mina lo v'lachutz. So we should, if we find the blood there, then we should say that it's not wadai. We should be machmir and say that we're not going to burn it. It's going to be machmir here is saying that it's tahor or suffix tahor, not wadai tame is being, because we're burning suffix here seemingly. So being machmir, we're not going to burn it. So we should be choishesh for the blood that's further out. If you find it at the beginning of the prosdor as opposed to from within the lull, from within the hole of the bladder, venera lo the halachic Rabbi Xanina. Here they put the hagah. Here this hagah goes over here. It's a bit of a mess of what the Gershus here on the Taisus is. So basically, we have a reason what's so important to say that there's only one roiv here with the prosdor, because you should be geyser and say that the tahor blood, which is further out, we should be worried about that, because we should make a gezerah. Even if you find blood further in, we should be geyser for blood further out, which is tahor. But no, I only need one roiv, and that's the Rebbe Zera. So v'shma mina roiv deraisa. Now we did touch on this before. The chashav le rubah deliisa kaman. Now, basically we said before that the roiv da'isa kaman is a roiv that we can count, and the roiv deliisa kaman is a roiv that we know from hanhagas ha'olam. We don't actually have any. We don't have any blood in front of us, so most blood comes from the makor. I don't need to see any blood. I don't have blood in front of me. I'm counting the blood and seeing how much blood is here and how much is there, all the tame and all the tahor. It's the way of the world that most blood is from the makor. I don't need to know how much blood is coming out of the bladder or other places. Blood comes from the makor. It's like a davar yudua. And again, that most animals are kosher. It's a davar yudua. You don't need to actually check all the animals and do. So that's a ruva deleisa kaman. But a ruva de'isa kaman, another like a ruva deleisa kaman is most people don't pay until they're asked. So that's chazaka she'ein adam porei b'toch zmano. We have a chazaka that somebody doesn't pay b'toch zmano. How do you know? It's the way of a hanhagas, but it's a leisa kaman. We don't have 10 people in front of us, and they're all saying, "Oh, we don't pay b'toch zmano." That's the isa kaman. So it's a hanhagas ha'olam is the lesa command. So Tosfos is saying that basically that this the blood coming from the womb is a ruba de lesa command, which fits because we're not counting up the blood. The beruba de isa command, which would be 9 shops. How do you know that most of the shops are kosher? Because you counted them. So I have, and also when you have an isa command, it's actually worse because you have 1 treif shop in front of you. Whereas if you have a ruva de isa command with the blood, you don't have any tahor blood in front of you. Maybe there's no tahor blood b'chlal. But here you do have 1 treif shop. That's a ruva de isa command. So lo tzarech lemedak. We don't need to be medaik here. Shema mina ruva deraisa. I know ruva deraisa, but here we're learning that the ruva de leisa command is deraisa. That's what I'm learning from here. The ruva de isa command shema mina dekro kasiv achrei rabban lahatos. I already know that a ruva de isa command. And why is achrei rabban lahatos an isa command? Because I have 3 dayanim, or whatever your number, your in uneven number of dayanim are. I count up to them. How many say zakai? How many say chayev? That is a ruba de isa command because I can count them. A ruba de leisa command by dayanim would be most dayanim say it's mutter. Like who are these dayanim and how many don't say it and what do you that's a ruba de leisa command. Again, it's not true. Most rabbis, whatever it is, maybe some stuff. Yeah, most rabbis are mekel. That's a ruba de leisa command. And again, you can argue on, on that, but that isn't what they're talking about. But that's just a hanhagas ha'olam. So could a para perak kama de chulin gabi had the boy manale had the amrin zil basaroiva uparach manale dechlev achrei rabban lahato. So Tosfos is bringing, he's showing that this posuk is I don't need to bring a proof for this posuk. So Tosfos' question here is why do I need a proof? And his answer is because this is a raya that even for a ruba de leisa command is a din deraisa, even not a ruva isa command. Again, I wouldn't think a ruva isa de leisa command would be. So again, my nonsensical ruba de leisa command that most rabbis are mekel. It's not, that's not a din deraisa because that's just something I've made up. But when you have the ruba de leisa command of most animals are kosher. So therefore, milk is mutter, deraisa. Because if that was not a din deraisa, then we have problems with milk and all that type of stuff. So we can go over that. So here the Tosfos is Eimor Mahai Daqara Atai. So this is going with the chavit of wine that is found next to this city. V'lav davka nimsis keneged ir sheruba Yisrael. So the Gemara says that. Shmuel is saying, even though it's by a city of Rov Yisrael, since it could have come from this city that's further up, which is Goyim, so therefore it's not just Rov Yisrael, Aser Shmuel, Afilu Ir Shekuli Yisrael Ikla Mechash Lahachi. So it doesn't matter, even it's not Korov Bos to the Rov, and this is Rov, but even cooler. It's that since he's saying that it's coming, it could have come from that Goyish place, and that's Ruva Da'alma, even if it's, so you have this huge Goyish metropolitan, even if it's, so the fact that the Gemara is talking about a city of Rov Yisrael, it's Lav Davka, because even if everyone there is Yisrael and things there, since we're Choishesh for this, city, it's all the Goyim, so therefore it doesn't matter how many Jews are there, it can be all Jews. So that brings us up to the last section of the Gemara here. So that's all the toisim here. Now, here we have this case, and this is going to be an important case in the whole. So, Yehahu chatzva, we have this chavit. Chatzva is a chavit, or it's a, Rashi says, chavit shal yayin. That's further up, but the chamra. orlah. So you find a chavis of wine, and it's found in a kerem of orlah. So basically the question is this going to be an orlah barrel of wine and therefore aser, or you say it's not an orlah barrel of wine and it's mutter. So shari ravina. So ravina is matir, this barrel of wine. So Rashi here, pardesa to orlah, but kerem shel orlah. Shari Ravina v'lo chash shema mikerem ze ganav hayayin ze. So he doesn't think that the ganav stole it from this. Or now obviously it's a ganav because it says that they found it in a pardes. So if it's from the pardes, they didn't find it there. They just made it there. So obviously some guy stole it and then it's found in the pardes to orlah. So Lema Mishum de orlah the Rabbi Xanina. So that Ravina holds of Rabbi Xanina. Why is this a case of Rabbi Xanina? Because we have the Karov will tell you that this Chavis is orlah, and the Roiv will tell you that it's not orlah. Right? So we see here like most is not orlah. So since most is not orlah, so therefore Roiv and Karov, you go Basar, the Karov would be Osir, the Roiv would be Mutter, and Ravina was Matir, therefore he goes to Rabbi Xanina. Now, there's a few reasons why Roiv of wine is not orlah, or Roiv produce is not orlah. The simple one is, let's say a tree gives you 20 years of fruit, and only the first 3 years are orlah, so therefore most of them is not. You also have that the first few years of the fruit do not give much fruit, or their fruit is crap. So therefore, the actual fruit you're getting is like 95% of it is going to be not orlah. So we say that's not the reason. Shani hasam to eat mignav minei itsuni bagavei lo matsuni. We say no, this isn't the reason why. It's that if they stole it from there, they wouldn't hide it there. V'hani mili chamra aval invi matsuni. So Rashi here, if they stole it from there, ain't derech ganavim lehatzniya hayayim b'mokum sheganvuhu. That is not the way of thieves to hide the wine in the place where they stole it. Now, what did they steal? Where are they? They're in a kerem. What's in a kerem? It's like the joke. What do you put in a toaster? You put bread in it, does not toast. So he didn't find it in a winery or when they find it in a kerem. So the kerem shall orlah. So therefore they stole grapes. They didn't steal wine. They stole grapes. Mishum, they were afraid maybe they will be fined them da'oreytא anavim. So Rashi's kind of spelling out what's kind of obvious here, that you steal grapes and you're in the place you stole the grapes, and it's going to take you time to turn it into wine, and you're like in this kerem and you're just like stomping on like this, like a comedy sketch or something, and you're stomping on the grapes and you're trying to put them in, and some guy stops you like, who the hell are you and what are you doing here? He's like, I'm just I work here. So, well, I've never seen you before. It's like, oh, like what are you doing turning into wine in the kerem? So therefore it's not going to come from here, because you don't turn it. If you steal the grapes from this kerem, you're not going to turn to wine in that kerem. Therefore, they would have stolen the grapes from a different kerem, and they could have made it into wine in this kerem or whatever it is, or they turned it into wine somewhere else, and it's not from this kerem. But the grapes, honey milichem, that's only by the wine, because it's different from what you're seeing. Aval envy, you would hide the grapes in the place where you stole them. Now, hanhi ziki dechamra. So ziki dechamra, or notice there's just bottles of wine that they have, like these leather flasks they used to make. De ishkachak bei kupi. So bei kupi, Rashi says tumnim bein gefanim shebekerem v'hi shel Yisrael. So he found these wine bottles between the grapes in the vineyard of Yisrael. And the Taisus say, Beikubi, Perish Ba'oirech, Mokum, it's a place. Like we say, Rav Mordechai, Avlili Rav, Shimi, he gave a leviatum, he walked him out, Barishi lebeikupi. So he went to this place, to Beikupi. He gavna haivit to have a kurva de muchach. So Taisus is learning this last case, the kurva de muchach. Rashi saying that it's just when in the grapes of a kerem, and the kerem belongs to a Jew. Sheneru Rava from Shari, he's Maksher. Rava said his mutter. So Lema law sover law the Rabbi Xanina. So now Rava, who we've seen above, holds of Rabbi Xanina. Lema law sover law the Rabbi Xanina. So Toysus here, perish v'ha rava islay la'ayel de Rabbi Xanina. So the Marsha, it says, so what's Toysus saying here? Mishum de la'ayel perach tomud de behepech. Lema mishum de sover le Rabbi Xanina. Hushach eloimer de hacha, lo perach eila mishum de rava islay la'ayel ha de Rabbi Xanina. So Toysus is explaining what the question of the Gemara is. So that's why he has to v'ha rava islay la'ayel de Rabbi Xanina. Because it's Lema Rava Lisley Rabbi Xanina, maybe he does. Why is this a big thing? No, because above we proved that he doesn't. So Lema Salver la de Rabbi Xanina. You see here, so lo Salver Leilech Acher Haroiv, Ela Acher Hakarov. The Kan Yisrael Mitzoim Yoitzer Minachrim, Velo Azlin and Bater Roiva Da'almã. So here we're going. So it's amongst it's in a vineyard of Jews. So therefore, he's going to ban korov, even though roiv bottles of wine or are going to come from goyim, and since they're coming from goyim, the roiv will say that it's not kosher, and the korov will say it is kosher. So you say shiny has some deruva deshfuchi Yisrael ninhu shviche yayin min achavis lenoidus. That you pour out the wine, so it's like you're putting them into smaller bottles, so rather than selling out the chavis, and that you're putting them into small bottles. So there would be that most people who have the small bottles of wine would be Jews. The people who were on their way. But Medina Zos Kadamasik Va'azil. So they're the small bottles that they would have. Honey mili de baravrvi. So that's in the big bottles. About the small bottles, Imer Ma'avri Derachim Nafel. So this is what Tosha said before, that the bottle fell. Why do we say that's coming from someone who's passing by? Because for sure it fell. So the big ones is how you sell the wine. You're putting them into smaller bottles, but they're still big containers. But the small containers, the orvei derachim, would carry such. Daliכא lemichash leruba da'almã lememar orvei derachim nipul. So therefore, in the big ones, it didn't come because the people who were traveling don't carry them, but the wholesalers, the Jews, who make them from the big to the small, that's what they do. So now if we have them both together, so if you just find the small ones, so therefore they're also because they came from someone, a goy dropped them. If they're big ones, then the Jew dropped them. And if you find them, both of them together, small and big, therefore they're kosher, because you say that the ba'avri havi menichi. So the idea of the avri menichi lahashovas masa hachamor. So you put the big ones and the small ones on either sides of either of the load or of the saddle, and therefore whenever you drop a big one, you'll be dropping a small one as well. So whenever you find the big ones, the small ones are there with it, but you go after the big one, not the small one, and therefore you say that it is kosher. So now moving back, we skipped the two toisvisim here because these get a bit in depth. So Leimah Mishum the Savar Laka Rabbi Xanina. So this is going on why did Ravina matir the wine? So Tosha says Veleka Lameimar Deshari Mishum Desafek orlah b'chus la'aretz muteris. Okay, so now we have a din that orlah is chayiv in chus la'aretz. However, the only time that's basically also in chus la'aretz is if you go into the pardes of the goy and he tells you this tree is 1 year old or 2 years old, and I am now taking the fruit of this tree to give to you. At that point, that is it's wadai orlah. That wadai orlah is also any safek orlah. If you turn around and he picks from the tree and gives it to you, he says, "Oh, I don't know where you got this from." So safek orlah in chus la'aretz is mutter. Safek orlah in Eretz Yisrael is also. There's a kula in chus la'aretz, even though there's a din of orlah. Basically, it never comes up because everything's a suffix. Anything you buy, you go to Walmart, you buy stuff, you have no idea what it is. It's only when it's vada, it's osur. So maybe Ravina, because again they're in Bavel here, maybe Ravina was matir because suffix orla b'chus la'aretz is mutter. So what's I going to do with Rabbi Xanina? Daha'i leislek Rabbi Xanina ele roi v'karov v'slin bosa karov imkain have vada orla. So Tosha is saying it if he doesn't hold of Rabbi Xanina. So therefore, we're dealing with a roiv and korov. And if it's a roiv and korov, so therefore we go basar korov because he doesn't have Rabbi Xanina. As even a basar korov because he doesn't have Rabbi Xanina. Can have a wadai orlah. Yeshlim so gam heksher gam livnei Eretz Yisrael b'yayin shel karmi avodim kochavim. So even in Eretz Yisrael, it's in the Shulchan Aruch here. Even in Eretz Yisrael, there's a heksher for yayin that's from goyim. Mishum deruva gefanim lav orlah ninhu. So here is the gro. Vayeslim so yeah kemoshe kazav bavasra liymã. So this is the that's the Gemara is going on. V'kol shekain b'ki hagavna. So kol shekain ki hagavna. What's the kol shekain? So we're saying, so again, if we go back into the what the Minchas Yichah is saying, the sham is when you have wine produce that's found in an orlah field. Produce that's found in an orlah field is not from that orlah field. So even though you find it in an orlah field, as in a basar roiv, why don't we go? Because it's Rabbi Xanina, because we're going basar the roiv. So if you're in a orlah field, you don't say that it's orlah produce. Af benimsa pertains to orlah, right? So even if you're in an orlah field, you say the produce you find there is not. You go basar the roiv. It's not from the orlah field. Therefore, if you go into the shuk and you find produce, then kol shekain you go basar the roiv, and roiv is not going to be orlah, and then that's a big heksher based on his toisvus. So therefore, that's a big heksher for which the Gro brings. That's a big heksher even in Eretz Yisrael for orlah, and therefore you don't need a heksher for orlah in Eretz Yisrael. And you can see the rest of the teshuvah there, Minchas Yitzchak, for more chumras and more kulas. But Bekitzer, this Tosis is saying that even though you find it there, you go basar the roiv and not basar the korov, because we post like Rabbi Xanina. Then the chiddush there, the gro, is that so therefore if you're in the orlah field, so therefore there you say it's not orlah. So therefore if you find it outside an orlah field, for sure you say it's not orlah. Therefore anything you find, unless somebody's telling you this is orlah, even in Eretz Yisrael, then you go basar the roiv and it's not orlah. Therefore you don't need a heksher for orlah. So for the last choice of the Gemara has a shiny hasam to eat, because if he stole it from there, he wouldn't hide it there. Taisus, and he'd hide it there. Ve'im timer. So you have the question. Mikol mokum. Nevertheless, hey aser, the wine should still be aser, even though that it's not orlah, should still be aser. The ruva da'almã gar goyim. Since ruva da'almã are goyim, so we're going basar the roiv. Taka, we're going basar the roiv, and it's not orlah, but taka it's yain nesech. Gvaldik, this why the hell is this wine mutter? So says Taisvus. Roiv Ganvei Yisrael. Most thieves are Jews. Just like we say in Avodah Zarah. So what the hell is Tosis talking about? This is the Rosh in Avodah Zarah. So the Rosh here, Hani Ganvei Dahavi B'Pumpedesia. So there, I think Tosis also says in Pumpedesia, Silku Paschu Chavita. So they have this case of where going to worry about Yain Nesech, and that they used to transport money in chavis. They would put their money into a chavis, and then they would put a chavis amongst all the wine. So thieves would pop open all the barrels of wine to see if there's money in there. So in Pompedesia, they opened up all the chavis, and Rava says the wine is mutter. Why is the wine mutter? Roiv Ganvei Yisrael ninhu. Most thieves are Jews, but that's the Pompedesia Sheikh Gambi, because it's Davka in Pompedesia for Ramai Toiva, and they're all a bunch of Ramayim there. Pompedesia Levechish Shani Ush Pischa. They're saying that these people are terrible people. So Nirsha Nachshim, I think that's the end of the. That's the next So then he said, "V'kein b'makomos sheyesh liYehudim." Mirgish bifnei atzmo na'ol balayla telem begavnei Yisrael. So here the Rosh is saying that, so if you have a place where Jews are hanging around, so in the Jewish ghettos, so there you'll say that Roiv are Jews. It's not that Roiv, the Olam, or Jewish Ganavim. That's not what he's saying. In specific places, Pumpedesia is a place where there's a lot of, even though it's not Roiv Jews in Pumpedesia, Mistama, but there are a lot of how do you say, gnarly Jews, or they're not such nice people, or they're chancers, they're ganavim, they're people who are doing not nice things to do. Specifically, they're not, you want to watch yourself in these type of places. So so in Pompedesia, so there Taka Roiv or Ganavim or Yisrael, even though the Roiv people there are Goyim, but in general, then they're not, they're Roiv Jews, Ganavim are not Jews. But if you're in a Jewish ghetto area, and then you find something is stolen, or you find wine, Jewish ghettos, so therefore, you have areas of New York where Roiv of them are Jews. And again, when we spoke about finding them at Sia, you have the Karov. So you have certain areas where you have the Roiv are Jews. Now the Porus Yosef, Toises, Tzarchian, and Tzarchian, Demai Nafka Mina, Kaven Deruva, Da'almã Akum. Who cares if the Ruva are Akum, V'dilma Ganve Me'akum. So you see, Leish Loma Deruva Ganve Yisrael. So that's Toises' Teretz. So on the Teretz, so who cares? Kaven Deruva Da'almã is Akum, Dilma Ganve Me'akum. So even if Roiv Jews are stealing, why are they stealing kosher wine? Most wine is not kosher. So how does it even help that most thieves are Jewish? So therefore, what is Toises' Teretz? And the Porus Yosef just leaves it there. So Tzarchian, why? How does it help? Roiv, if they're Jews, still non-Jewish wine. What's the problem? So the Rashash to the rescue. I could say as usual, but usually when there's a Rashash, he's got the good stuff. Yishlom derov ganve Yisrael. L'chayra filo kol ganve Yisrael. Even everyone's a thief as a Jew. Become a kamkeva deruba Da'almã goyim havilela memor demehem gonvu. So most of so you stole from the Roiv, and the Roiv are goyim, and therefore still not kosher. Therefore, why is he matter? Yishlomer da'afel gav the ganve Yisura, the ganve Yisura lo achli. Sorry, afel gav the ganve Yisura lo achli. Even though they're ganavim and the oiver on lo tignov, or whatever the isser is, kedeperach rosh ba nedarim. So the isser, they're not going to eat isser. So that this avera they will do, but the isser they want of eating treif, they're not going to do. As the Rosh explains in Da'oraytã, b'zeh miyushav nami masha kosher l'chayra daha havi trei miuti l'sura d'yai nesach and orlah l'maydus hakadaicha. Ach lefizeh kasha makas hakadaicha de heksher mishum de Rabbi Xanina and mishum de Isra lo achli. Ishlomer mishum de in hoichen achar karov havelei v'dechachavim ganvei. And therefore they would be able to. Therefore, if the goyim are going to steal, then they'll steal from goyim. But the Jews are stealing. Now here, maybe the Jews are stealing to sell. But that's not a chashash. No, they're stealing to eat. They're not stealing to sell. Not going to sell it as things. So the Jews are going, so they have it in. If you look at the Rosh in Nadarim, that there's levels of averas. Just because you do one averas doesn't mean you're going to do all the averas. And therefore, even though that they are, and what's to say that the Jew has amuna in the machteres, that he davens to Hashem, even though he's about to go steal because he's going to steal. So he says that he won't eat isser. Now has this changed, and therefore the does the tariffs have to change? Would people do Jewish thieves eat kosher, or they'll only have non-kosher wine, or they'll have non-kosher wine? Anyway, that's the sugya.